Well, hello there. It's another day. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. Happy, it's Wednesday, is it not?
Halfway through another week already, but the news stops for no man or woman for that matter.
You know, it does. The weeks fly and the news flies. I guess Elon Musk came out yesterday and said, all right, so beginning in May, he's stepping back. Now, it doesn't mean he's stepping out of the picture, but he is going to go back to his business, as promised, and focus on Tesla and SpaceX and everything else. But he's also said, as needed, he might put in 1 or 2 days a week.
I don't know if they told you this yesterday, but apparently Musk, his answer to all of these people torching his, high-end Tesla dealerships,
Flood the market.
he's going to flood the zone with a cost-efficient Tesla, like a $10,000 or $11,000 car. I thought that was genius myself.
Well, I hope he does. I know he's talking about doing the robotics for everybody. You can have your own personal robot because, when he was talking about, $1,500, you do that, I'm buying one.
He's got a robot that can do like the moonwalk. The thing is amazing. I saw it on. I thought this is mind-boggling because just a few years ago they were working on balance with these robotics and they had to get it just right. It wasn't an easy thing to overcome. But apparently Tesla has done that. They got one that looks like Michael Jackson out there, Unbelievable.
Well, what I would recommend when they do those things, make sure that whatever processor it has in its core memory, it's universal so that when they do upgrade, you can say, oh, there's a new $500 processor. Great, I'll upgrade. If there's a new memory thing, I'll upgrade. So because... wouldn't it be nice to have that little thing that learns a little bit about you and but whatnot? But you want to be sure it doesn't spy. Now, I don't think he's the kind of guy that would do that, but apparently Apple is. There's some like viral video out there.
Well, this is amazing. This is amazing. They have a new. I think you sent it to me, didn't you, Bill? The Apple iPhone.
Yeah, it takes that. My phone has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cameras. This one was showing one with 2 and
three.
Then the third one. Yeah, 3.
Yeah.
You take out the third one.
Right.
And you set it aside. You can hold it, and you can go and see that it's on your phone.
It's a Bluetooth remote camera.
Yeah. Which you're going, well, that's how they make them. But what that also tells you is that anybody that knows that, obviously the company, the makers, and different people know that they can sit there and be in proximity and have everything you've got right there on video and probably sound.
It's amazing, folks. We're talking about a $2,000, $1,500 camera, a cell phone rather, and some college kid, I guess, apparently thought it was a good idea to take his brand new iPhone with the 3 lenses on it. And he must have thought, well, why is that third lens there? What does it do? And he took pliers to it, and he twists the lens off the camera like a screw, and it came out, and at least in the video, it looked like it had no wires connected to it. It was completely removable. It was portable. Then he takes the lens as if it were a little mini camera by itself. He gives his friend the phone. The friend goes to the Bluetooth settings. The Bluetooth settings finds the camera that his other friend is holding. The guy with the lens walks to the other side of the apartment, and it's like he's doing a remote broadcast with 2 separate cameras.
Yeah, it could be a fake video, but then I tend to believe it because something that small, you go, oh, no. But, go to Temu, the Chinese company, and you can buy these little remote Bluetooth cameras, and they charge themselves, So when that thing screws in, it probably connects to the current on the phone. It charges so that it works because it would have to hold a charge of some sort, like when the phone is off. So, whether they're just made that way and it happens to be, it shows the fact that it can be hacked.
Now, has this guy's completely screwed up his $2,000 phone by taking the lens out?
You could probably screw the lens right back in or pop it back in. I don't know, but it was an interesting thing. But
well, the scary thing about that is, like you said, who's watching you? When?
Yeah.
When you put your
Look,
phone down, are you sure that you have complete privacy nowadays?
well, what's going to happen is somebody, oh, that's fake. You guys, you're the biggest suckers in the world. No, not really. But, I'm just saying it was interesting. The technology's there, the possibilities there. So it might have been a fake video, but it is an eye opener, something I never thought about. But, you look at the news today, leak here, leak there. Oh, it's the Signal app. Maybe it's not the Signal app. Maybe it's the damn device. Hey, I want to remind you, we're on a lot of different platforms that we've got Spotify, Podbean, and whatnot. Just want to remind you as we grow to more and more platforms, very important that you like and share.
We were talking about robotics a little while ago, and they're saying that everybody's going to have one in the near future. It used to be something that was way down the road. As a matter of fact, I guess the first rocket towards Mars, which is planned, I think, next year, I could be wrong on the date, is going to be manned, not really manned, it's going to be operated by robots. They're going to put Tesla robots in the first ship, and it will go there, and they'll be our surrogate. They will get out and walk around. And I was thinking, boy, if there's anybody who's on Mars and they see the robots get out, they're going to think those are the aliens. That, they're our proxies and they're aliens. It'll be interesting to see where we're going. Musk says he wants to, in his lifetime, personally go to Mars, which I don't know whether that's such a good idea, especially a father with 9 kids, but apparently that's one of his lifelong dreams, and he wants to get there. They say there's going to be a robot in every house very soon. It'll be mowing the lawn. It'll be doing the chores. It'll be cooking the food. I find that hard to believe. I don't know how fast people are going to, get used to having a robot strolling around the house, but then again, we've gotten used to a lot of things that I didn't think we'd get used to, Bill.
Well, yeah, it's funny how fiction becomes reality. Well, was it back in '72? There was a movie called Silent Running, Bruce Dern in it. And I guess it was about a spaceship that took the last forest of the world. They were moving it because whatever happened to Earth happened. But I remember as a kid on there, because I liked the robots. He had 3 little robots that he got used to: Huey, Dewey, and Louie. So I thought, is Musk going to name these robots Huey, Dewey, and Louie?
Do you remember iRobot with Will Smith? That was about a world filled with robots, and I guess a certain faction of them became rogue, and that's what the premise was. That's the thing that worries me about AI. As a matter of fact, if you watch the upcoming episode of FBI Most Wanted, which, by the way, they're canceling. CBS is canceling FBI Most Wanted and FBI International. They had the FBI night on CBS on Tuesday. They're getting rid of 2 out of their 3 FBI programs, not because of ratings, but I think because they figure maybe it's just not sending the message that CBS wanted to send. Maybe it's political. Maybe the fact that the FBI is being run by conservatives now, Trump people, they don't want to give it the exposure. I don't know.
Because the scripts might start to tend to lead and to be conservative. Or maybe it's just the fact that they're going, the shows are doing well, but Bill, we've got 3 great shows. Why don't we have one super show? But they took what was it?
FBI Most Wanted coming up. They're going to have the villain is a rogue AI. This is the truth. I thought this is probably the first series episode where they're going to be fighting an artificial intelligence, rogue AI.
Artificial intelligence, one of the problems that they have with it, it's still in development. So you ask it to do something, it stores that memory. And the next time you ask it to do something that's entirely different, it interpolates the old into the new. It gets confused with that.
Well, does it understand the word honesty?
Well, yes and no. Yes, it understands what it is, but no, because if a dishonest person has programmed it and given it reference points that are not honest, then the computer doesn't know better.
Right. So
And
it'll think the dishonest is being honest.
right, it's yeah, it's well, you know what? It's the same as a person. If you are indoctrinated, you are given a set of circumstances as you grow up, and this is the reality that they serve. They spoon feed
Well,
to you.
will AI know that Hitler was a villain? Will AI know that what happened during World War II in the death camps was wrong? Does AI have that kind of ability to discern,
Well, it'll be
vile
on
from good?
it'll be on the interpretation that is given. I mean, they take characters like Hitler, and then they sit there and they try to impose that on Trump.
So what you're
So,
saying is,
well,
if you program it,
yeah,
to accept that as being normal and good, if you tell the AI that bad is good, it'll think bad is normal.
yeah. I mean, we are its God, so we're the creator,
But doesn't it go
and
out, Bill? Really, doesn't it go out? Doesn't AI evaluate millions upon millions of sites in a nanosecond, and then make
oh
an
yeah,
evaluation,
yeah,
an
it does. But
independent
okay,
evaluation?
I don't know that it does millions of sites. Usually, like if I use it to do an article, it'll do 25 to 33, maybe up to 50 sites, and in the scheme of things, that's a drop in the bucket. So it's giving these root sites, and I'm sure it's busted down by categories.
When we
That it
had
goes in regions.
when we had an AI do a search on our program on streams and ratings,
Mm.
in a split second, it appeared to have gone around the world to get sites that we never got. We never even knew we were on.
Right. Yeah. It does that because there's some kind of footprint it knows how to do because you gotta look at it this way. The internet is all it's connected, in one way, shape, form, or another. Um, yeah,
I
so it's
I heard
interesting.
somebody say yesterday, and it's true, that no longer do we have to, or should we have to, wait to have people evaluate, for example, the Epstein files or the JFK files. People say, well, they're 87,000 pages, the JFK files. Apparently, with AI, it can evaluate. You can put in parameters like, tell me who the shooters were, tell me who the witnesses were, tell me what happened, and it will do the search and the evaluation in seconds.
Well, now, interesting thought here. The old way that computers used to work back in the maybe the late '90s, early '00s, people wanted to get music. The music piracy has always been a problem.
Right, right.
And if you wanted to get the latest, with your computer, the latest album, you would put in a search, and what it did is somewhere somebody had that album that
Right.
they dropped into their computer or that song, but they might only be on for a few seconds, a few
Yeah,
minutes. So, what this program would do is it would go out and find all the sources that were online right at time
playing
that
that
had that
song.
foot, or had that song in its memory. And it would go take as much as it could from one string and then go
Yeah.
to another string and do that. So I would imagine computers probably still work that way in searches. So you could probably go into some AI program, Chat GBT or Grok, and say, I need the Epstein files, all of them. And it would probably sit there and do a search and find, a page here, a page there, and all of a sudden say, okay, how many pages do you want? It's going to take, because it would take a while for you to physically download it, but it could probably have the whole of it right there.
Yeah,
I'm saying I don't know.
I guess they have to release it first, obviously, the Epstein file. But um, I would think that the government has got many different variations of AI at
Right.
its beck and call, and they don't need to have a bunch of staff people sitting around going through pages anymore.
Well, don't you think, we're talking about all these leaks out there, all
Right?
right? So if that theory holds true in all the leaks, okay, then somebody somewhere has taken home a page or one particular piece of that
Yeah.
document. And they go, well, I don't want to lose this. I'm going to scan this in and I'll keep it in a file here in the back that nobody knows about. Well, nobody knows about it but another computer. It knows how to find it.
Well, don't you think that the reason that those three guys from the Defense Department were asked to leave, and by the way, they were all veterans and they were all friends for the most part of Pete Hegseth. And people thought, I listened, by the way, to Tucker Carlson's interview with Dan Caldwell, who was one of the guys who was removed. Caldwell was a 9-year friend of Pete Hegseth. They had worked together closely. And Hegseth, to his credit, he said after he removed these guys, they were removed because they leaked. They leaked information that they shouldn't have leaked, but not because of their service. They all were a credit to their country and all served honorably. He made a point to emphasize that you couldn't. He was not smearing their entire background. Just the fact that they had stepped out of bounds at the Defense Department and leaked information. You know, when I listen to Tucker is a very smart young guy. He is a terrific interviewer, gets the most out of the people he's talking to. But I was convinced when I heard him listen to Dan Caldwell that he was sold that Caldwell was given the short end of the stick. And I think I mentioned this yesterday in the program. I think that you have to remember that even good people can do stupid things and get themselves into trouble. And I think Caldwell did that. And I think that you had no other reason. You had no other option. You had to remove him. It would have been wrong for Hegseth to leave these leakers in their position. He had no option. You know, you leaked confidential information, stuff that shouldn't have left this building, and you're going to have to go. Megyn Kelly was talking about the interview with Pete Hegseth, with what's his name, Tucker Carlson, with Dan Caldwell, and she kind of was on our side when it came to Pete Hegseth and what he had to do and why he did it. Listen.
And in that exchange, Caldwell suggests that he was forced out of the Pentagon, not because he leaked anything to any member of the press, which he denies doing, but because he is anti-war with Iran due to his experiences in Iraq.
It started really pushing me to where I'm at now in foreign policy. Like, we need to do something differently. And it kind of radicalized me in a certain way on this. And really, there's an argument that you need to be, when you're talking about foreign policy, you kind of need to be cold and detached. Like some people say that realists need to be cold and detached. I don't necessarily buy that. But, you know, when I hear about launching a new military operation, somebody talk about something, my first thought is, what's it going to be like for the guys? What's it going to be like for the boys that are going to be in the front?
Now, the suggestion implies that Secretary Hegseth, or those who suggested to Hegseth that Caldwell be fired, feel differently than Caldwell does there. Though I can tell you myself from many conversations with Pete over the past 6 months, he is far from a neocon. We've talked all about it. He was much more pro-war, as much of the Republican Party was back during the Bush years. He signed up. He left Princeton to go fight. I mean, he was in that mindset, which most of us were post 9/11. That's why he volunteered and fought at Gitmo and in Iraq and in Afghanistan. But he's had a serious change of heart from and thanks to those experiences, much like Caldwell. Pete is not a neocon.
A lot of people don't understand what a neocon is. Let me just take a second. A neocon, it came out back in the 60s and 70s. A lot of people in the Democratic Party were not satisfied with the direction the party was going in the 60s. It was a party of peace and love and pacifism, and no one goes to war. And there were a lot of mainstream Democrats who were saying, nonsense, we're Democrats, but we believe you have to stand up and fight. That's what we fought World War II for. A lot of them were veterans from World War II, and they didn't like where it was going. So neo means new, neoconservative, new conservatives. And the definition essentially was war, combat, no matter what. Under almost every circumstance, it was combat was justified. What she just said was that Pete Hegseth, he's not a hawk in the sense of you got to go to war, you got to fight.
Mm-hmm.
The answer is war. Pete Hegseth, who was in war, she said, was far more hawkish back in 2001 than he is right now. He believes you have to, walk softly but carry a big stick, meaning, you don't go out there and start problems. You don't go out there and create problems, but you carry that stick just in case someone's coming after you so you can swat it down. Go ahead.
I was going to say, a lot of these peacenik people, they talk about people that love war and like to fight. Let me tell you something about them. They're the first one to pick up a stick and jab you in the eye, shoot you in the back. They sit there, they have they don't care about you. It's all about them. And whatever their freedom of expression, speech, sexual agenda, whatever it is, they will stop at no level to sit there and get what they want. They're spoiled brats.
Well, to that point, today, there's a piece of audio we talked about before the show started of a liberal podcaster, and we're not going to mention her name or even play the cut because we don't want to give her any publicity because she's just one of these people. She had Rahm Emanuel on as a guest, a definite leftist, a proven leftist, friend and fan of Hillary's and Barack's, and she was voicing her disdain of him. He was too far to the center for her. She said in this interview that how did she put it? That the right, the MAGA people, were too obsessed with sexuality and transgenderism. And I thought to myself, lady, you are a friggin' lunatic.
Yeah. It's funny.
Go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say, sometimes the people that are out there dancing naked in the streets and doing everything, talking about their constitutional rights for their freedom of expression, they are sitting there taking the Constitution and twisting it to get their own way, their own rights. It's been done before. It's an old playbook, and it worked once. And by the way, what I'm referring to goes way back into the 80s, and it's been used against us. And now what I see is these people and a lot of the weird left, what we call the whack jobs left, they love to cuss at us. They love to name call and call us Nazis and everything. And they love to take the Constitution and the things that were defined in the Constitution to give everybody certain freedoms and expressions. They've distorted, but they've taken it as a shield and a weapon to beat us down.
Have you noticed that the angriest people out there are the leftists?
Mm-hmm.
Not the people on the right. The people on the right, for the most part, are law-abiding. We sat around on our hands for 4 years while Joe Biden crapped all over our country, and we were lawful. We didn't go out and burn things and deface things and light things on fire. We were lawful. You guys on the left, mind you, at the drop of a hat, you'll go out and you'll burn stores and you'll burn Teslas, you'll deface things, you'll pull statues down, all in the name of peace.
Yeah, they bully, they intimidate, and they do whatever they can to sit there and rattle your cage. They take the Constitution, they distort it, what it's really all about, and it's terrible. I mean, I mentioned a show that I'd just ironically, I didn't even turn it on, somebody else did, said, well, this is interesting, and it talked about an old thing that happened here in the United States back, if you remember the old Jim Jones cult, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which one of these
Jonestown,
days I'll tell you. Yeah, the Jonestown, where they all committed suicide.
Yeah.
There's a letter I want to get from somebody that I'll show you one day. But either way, there was another Indian cult group. Basically, they were a sexual cult. It was universal love.
Yeah.
We're going to dance around naked and have orgies, but we're going to be, everybody loves one another. And they bought the 100-acre ranch in Oregon. And they were building and growing, and people said, what the hell is going on here? They were going to farm, but now they're not. They're building this community. And then the town that was next to it, which is now a ghost town you can't get into, they went in and infiltrated and took over their elections. And then as they wanted to grow some more, they started, does this sound familiar? They started saying, we're going to bring in all the homeless so they can vote.
Yeah.
And so they started feeding and housing them and doing all of this stuff. And they were doing everything, but they used the Constitution, and the religious
Against the
freedom
townspeople.
against the townspeople and against the United States. And it wasn't until one person sat there and said,
does it sound familiar? But what's happening right now with the border situation, with these
it's
judges?
the playbook. It is the playbook. The show is called, I think it's called Wild Wild Country, not West, but Country. It's from 2018. It's a documentary, and it's a series. I'm on part 3 or 4 now, and I was like going, you get to that part because they were dissolved in the late 80s. But the irony is, you've seen what has happened in Oregon in recent years. These people didn't go do mass suicide. They got caught for stepping out of the bounds. And so they were taken down.
This is the problem that
They're still here.
we have right now. We have a border situation where we should be flying and busing these illegal criminals back to either El Salvador or Venezuela, where they came from, and we should be doing like an ongoing freight train or an ongoing process. It's not happening because these judges have thrown the Constitution, like you're just talking about, in our face.
Well, see, this cult, they infiltrated. Now, they were fighting Republicans and Democrats, just hardcore, basic, everyday Democrats. And these people didn't know what to do because they never expected anybody would come in and just take the Constitution, the Holy Grail, the Bible, and shove it against them. But they did.
Yeah.
Then they took over places of power. They infiltrated offices. They ran for city commission positions so that they can dictate and change laws and rules. And one of the things, they would get in your face. They would call you a Nazi. Oh, well, these Christians. Really?
Yeah.
And I was watching this. I'm going like, and this was real footage of real people.
We have a problem now,
Oh,
and
geez.
I'm going to play this cut here from Caroline Levitt's press conference yesterday. Listen.
2 questions, one on immigration and one on China. First on immigration. Roughly how many illegal immigrants and aliens do we have in our country, and how many does the administration plan on deporting?
Sure. Well, you'd have to ask the Department of Homeland Security for a specific number, but we suspect it's definitely in the millions, perhaps upwards of 20 million people that were allowed into the country illegally by the previous administration. And the president and his team are focused on deporting as many as we possibly can. And they are moving as quickly as possible. The president's team has made it clear we need more funding from Congress to do more. We need more ICE agents out on the ground doing this very important work. And we also need rogue district court judges to stop acting as judicial activists, trying to block the administration from deporting illegal criminals from our nation's interior. The American public elected the president to do this, and he's following through with that promise.
And we have over 250,000 Chinese nationals in our country right now on student visas. Does the administration believe there's any national security concern when it comes to those over 250,000 Chinese nationals in our country?
Well, as you know, when it comes to foreign visas, the Secretary of State has the right to revoke visas of those who we feel are acting in an adversarial way to our foreign policy interests here in the United States. He has that authority according to the Immigration and Nationality Act. So I would defer you to the State Department for any individual case, but they are looking at individuals who are given the privilege of being on a visa in our country. And if they are acting, again, adversarial to our foreign policy interests, their visa can be revoked, and they should be aware of that.
So we have a problem. We've only removed about 100,000 in the first nearly 100 days.
We got millions.
And we got 20 million, yeah. And so my question is, if these judges keep doing what they're doing right now, can we even come close to getting rid of the troublemakers, the criminals? Never mind all of the other people who are here, the good people. I'm talking about the bad guys. Can we get rid of all those people?
My honest opinion is we've got a problem, and I don't know that this one can be solved. And unfortunately, the forefathers never in a month of Sundays, a year of Sundays, a decade of Sundays would have ever dreamed in their wildest dreams of what's going on and how things are being taken and maligned and misused is going on. But, it's not just here. Look at Vienna with the Muslims. And now they've come in and they've taken over. They've overrun. Sure. They've overrun the system.
Oh, Spain! They're complaining in Spain about the centuries-old Christian, Easter processions that have been going on, like I said, forever, for centuries. The Muslims who are there illegally, who came across without an invitation, are now complaining to the government it violates their rights.
Yeah, well, and and they use the freedom of expression, freedom of religion. Unfortunately, their religion does not allow you, but they're free to practice that, and that means the dissolution of you. And I'm like going, wait a minute. That is not what, but...
Look at Sweden, Bill. We talked about that yesterday.
Yeah.
Sweden, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Sweden with their centuries of Swedish tradition. Now they're in danger of losing all of it. All of it. They say, some people believe they're at a point of no return. It'll never come back, no matter how hard they try.
I did an article for a publication, and it was about and if I remember the numbers right, but the top three are important. The religions of the world and where are they in numbers, and there's a lot of different religions, but it doesn't matter how far down the totem pole you are. It's how you play the game. And I think number one is, the Christian faith, and number two, the Catholic faith. You could kind of combine them together. And then number three is the Muslim faith. Now, I say that because let's go to the Catholic faith right now. What goes on in the Vatican has been cloaked in secrecy for years, and now we're going to wait for everything, and soon the conclave will go in there, and they will sit there and choose a new pope, and we'll wait for the white smoke. Now, Francis, he was very liberal, and there's a call for people like you and practicing Catholics, the church, they need a conservative pope. Mm-hmm. But the one thing is, Francis, the people that vote, he flooded the field with 80%, liberal.
He flooded the zone. Most of the people who will be voting in the conclave,
80%.
I think they said 103 out of the 180 or whatever it is were picked by Francis.
Yeah,
and so
so you know what, your dreams of it righting the ship.
Yeah,
no, it's going to go it's already a hard left. It's going to go in reverse. It's going to turn. It's going to be doing a 180 and going the wrong way. Hey, look, you know what? If you're listening to the podcast, we appreciate it. We're on more and more platforms. We're growing every day, which is important for us to say. If you're listening and like the show, be sure you give us a like and give us a share. We'd appreciate it.
Speaking of strange things, I was reading an interesting article this morning about Klaus Schwab. You know who Klaus Schwab is? He's the head of the World Economic Forum. He's a globalist, and he's if you look at the world and think of it as good guys and villains, a lot of people would say he's the chief villain. But something interesting is going on. Apparently, he's not villain enough for a lot of people. He's now under internal investigation following some whistleblower allegations of financial and ethical misconduct. Ooh, Klaus apparently has been a bad boy, but he's about 84 years old. I don't know how much he could have done wrong at 84, but hey, who knows? And I guess they're looking to get somebody who's even more villainous to be in that position, the position that he has had as leader of the World Economic Forum. in case you're not aware of who they are, I should point out they're globalists. They meet regularly. I think once or twice a year in Davos, Switzerland, and they get there and talk about the problems of the world and how they can fix it. Now, mind you, none of these people have been elected by anybody. They're just there with their opinions and how they think it should be fixed. They will all fly in on their private jets into Davos, and then they'll talk about how the world needs to be more environmentally safe. Just to get on their private jet and fly from wherever they came from to Davos probably was a year's worth of pollution for some small countries, but that doesn't bother them. They're the exception. I think they talked to John Kerry once and said, Mr. Kerry, you fly to Davos on a private jet, and you come here and talk about how we have to be environmentally sound with our policies. Don't you think that being on a private jet by yourself is not being environmentally sound? And he said, well, I'm the exception. I couldn't do this type of thing if I didn't have a private jet. That's why they made business class, John. But then again, I don't think you'd find...
He's above that,
Yeah, you wouldn't.
And you know what? Given some of the stuff he's done, would you want to fly vulnerable?
Yeah, I think that's true. Maybe he thinks that he's safer in a private airplane.
Yeah, he's above everybody. He's got to fly first class private.
So there's trouble in paradise for Klaus Schwab. They're the group that want to have 550 million people as a total world population number. Right now we're like 6 billion people in the world. That means that like 5,450,000,000 people have got to die for them to be happy. It's like, come on, guys.
Chances are we're killing people every day with just the chemicals we put into the foods and everything else.
Oh, and did you hear the complaints we got yesterday when RFK came out and said, hey, look, we're going to get rid of a lot of these food colorings, these dyes that are petroleum-based. We're going to just stop putting them in foods. We're going to make it outlawed. And a lot of people say, oh, how can we get along without red dye number whatever? And I was thinking, well, so it won't be bright enough in the box. So it won't really look really bright red in the milk in your bowl.
Well, we like shiny things. And I guess we want our food to be that way. As long as it doesn't look like slop but it tastes good, I'm fine.
Well, that's what's it going to do, for example, to a product like Skittles, which are little brightly colored glossy candies that I'm sure have a lot of food coloring in them.
Well, they have there's some kind of metal in them too. That's not good for you.
You just make it more interesting.
Yeah, because the whatever it is that makes it shiny. There was about a year ago.
So you're saying you can polish your Skittles if you wanted to?
I guess so. Hey, I got a Skittle here. Well, why don't you plate your car with it? You got a rust spot there. Let's hammer it in. I don't know. There's some kind of metallic material that's in it, and I'm like going, oh, that's nice and healthy. Who approves that? Because we have chemicals in our food here that aren't in foods elsewhere. And the other thing that I've noticed, it seems that a long time ago, America was once a lean, fit fighting machine.
Right.
If you saw somebody with a 34, 36 waist, they were overweight. And
I was that in fourth grade. Go ahead.
Yeah, but things in foods changed, and there's debate about chlorination that is in the water and that it can do harmful things to us.
Yeah,
they
talk about fluoride being a problem, and fluoride was in everything. When I was a kid, they bragged about it in toothpaste. Oh, this toothpaste has fluoride. We didn't know what the heck it was, but we wanted it in our toothpaste. It's going to fix every problem you have.
Yeah, there's so many Dow and all of that, and aluminum and Teflon that you could everything that was touted as good for us. It's turned out to be bad, and I'm starting to wonder if maybe it was planned. That there was maybe that was the form of population
Well,
control.
after when I was a kid, after World War II, everything had to be new and sleek and shiny and advanced. It was the new age that we were living in. Prior to World War II, they had the Depression. They had old stuff, if they had anything at all. Now there was affluence, and they wanted the best and the shiniest for less when I was a kid. And so the companies, they did the best they could to
Adhere to it.
They wanted it. If you wanted it shiny and new and sleek, and it would fix every problem you had. And, you want a toothpaste that's going to get rid of cavities? Well, let's put fluoride into it. What else can we put into it? That's about it, really. I don't think putting anything else in the toothpaste is a good idea. So they put fluoride in it, and that was great, but it apparently didn't do what people said it was doing. They still put it in the toothpaste. I was brushing my teeth just last night looking at the toothpaste, and there still is fluoride in the toothpaste that I use. But I think it's a step in the right direction. They said these food colorings are petroleum-based and not necessarily other than to make things look bright and shiny. And I thought, well, hey, I don't mind, like you said, Bill, eating, if it's dull looking but it tastes great, that's okay with me. They had one food coloring they were using in things like hot dogs to make them look more fresh and tasty. It had nothing to do with the taste or the freshness. It was just the appearance of the hot dog.
Yeah, you look. Have you ever gone to a grocery store and you looked at the produce and go, boy, how, it's not even in season and it looks so good. Well, it's frozen. It's got a chemical that's put on it to preserve it and to make it look good. But then once it's brought out there, it's only got so many days of shelf life. And but there is stuff put on it to make it last the longest. In other words, it's like embalming fluid for the darn fruit that you're going to eat.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
can we put formaldehyde in the toothpaste? No, that's not a good idea. We'll be preserving the cavities. So anyway, Pam Bondi had a meeting yesterday. I don't know if you saw this. She had a group of people get together, and she sat down and they started a anti-Christian bias task force at the Justice Department. I thought that was interesting. Anti-Christian bias. They felt that things were so bad in government prior to them getting into office that they literally had to put a task force together to weed out all of this anti-Christian bias in government. And here's a little bit of how it went yesterday.
Thank you all for joining us today. We're excited to be here for the launch of the task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias as outlined in the President's executive order. Joining me today are members of the task force and individuals who have been impacted by the anti-Christian bias. Together, this task force will identify any unlawful anti-Christian policies, practices, or conduct across the government, seek input from the faith-based organizations and state governments to end anti-Christian bias, find and fix deficiencies in existing and regulatory practices that might contribute to the anti-Christian bias. As President Trump has stated, the Biden administration engaged in an egregious pattern of targeting peaceful Christians while ignoring violent anti-Christian offenses. The president is right. Biden's Department of Justice abused and targeted Christians. Pro-life Christians were arrested and imprisoned for peacefully praying outside abortion clinics. The FBI spied on traditional Catholics in their parishes. President Biden declared Easter Sunday to be Transgender Day of Visibility. No longer. Vandalism against churches was 8 times higher in 2023 than it was in 2018. And as at President Trump's directive, we ended those abuses at the Department of Justice on day one. We dropped 3 ongoing cases against pro-lifers and redefined the FACE Act. to ensure that abuse would not continue and that American tax dollars were not used to support the weaponization of our legal system.
That's Attorney General Pam Bondi during her meeting yesterday, eradicating anti-Christian bias with a new task force to do that, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, and I do think a step in the right direction.
Do you think it's going to be challenged, though? You know, maybe the atheists
everything
of the world will say, we need to be a part of that.
This goes back to the Friday meetings, the Friday Zoom call meeting the left is having every Friday. They'll they get together. The left does with.
Why aren't we allowed in it?
Well, it's because
about us. We should have a. We should have a say.
No. This is strategy. This is.
I know.
Doing their very level best to undermine everything this administration does. And that gets me to the other point. Do we have enough time? And at this pace, if we continue to allow the left to successfully obstruct the administration, can it be successful in 4 years? Can he do what he said he was going to do if every week a judge or several judges stand in the way with their robes and unlawfully, in my opinion, but do it anyway, throw an obstacle in the path?
Well, you've got 75 judges at least. You know, that's like having 75 different coaches on your team in a huddle on Friday to sit there and say, okay, we're down and under. Here's what to do.
Actually, they're attorney generals, not judges. They're attorney generals.
Okay, attorney generals. But it's the same thing. They're people that sit there and say, here's how you dance with the law. Here's how you manipulate this. Here's how you manipulate that. Here's what you can do to trip them up. And that's what they're doing. It's, they may not get everything they want, but if they can keep us at bay.
Yeah, I don't think they're all attorney generals. They're like attorney generals, and they're maybe former attorney generals. They're all, like you said, legal minds throwing their 2 cents in. Working on strategy to screw things up, which is subversive as far as far as I know.
It is. It's how do we sit there and how do we use the law in our favor? Trip them up. How do we go to the fence, lean over the fence, and sometimes they'll fall over the fence. They don't care.
We were talking earlier about how the left is the party of violence and demonstrations and anger. And I was thinking as we were talking about it, about back in 1918 during the Russian Revolution, the socialists were the angry people. The socialists were the violent people. With Lenin and his group, they thought nothing of killing for their sake, for their cause. I mean, they took literally the royal family in Russia. This is the socialist, the pacifist. They took the royal family into a basement and they shot them, all of them, women and children, everybody gone. That was their solution. That was the solution of the kind pacifist. And it hasn't changed. Well, we listen. I'm not going to play, like we said before, we're not going to play that cut from the liberal podcaster who's reaming out Rahm Emanuel. And but she was really vitriolic. She was filled with anger and venom, and he wasn't good enough for her. He was too middle of the road, too accepting of what the right was doing. She wanted a more violent solution, in my opinion. That's why we're not running it. I mean, she got, besides being angry, she was vulgar in her conversation with this guy. It wasn't good enough just to converse. She had to throw out every F-bomb and they're doing that a lot nowadays on the left. And you wonder whether that's a strategy. You see these stupid politicians on the left getting up at their rallies and saying, "Oh, I don't normally say this, but F Donald Trump," and it's like, you got to be kidding me. But somebody somewhere in a focus group said, you have to look like you're with the cause, you're down with the cause. You have to look like you're really going to change.
Well,
throw in some language.
It gets attention, it goes viral, and that's all they want. They want to capture that moment because once they crack that door open, then they can get their agenda and their message in. I mean, you've got a party of hate, fear, disdain, and destruction. HFDD. There you go. Hate, fear, disdain, and destruction. That's what the Democrats use as their.
Well,
You know,
to that point, you have to say, didn't those 4 congressmen who went down to El Salvador after Van Hollen, didn't they realize that they're not going to see this guy, Garcia? They're not going to.
they knew.
They knew, yeah. They were doing it just for the viral moment. They were doing it for the coverage from the press.
The news bite.
Yeah, these were 4 also-ran representatives who don't normally get any national attention, and now they were on the front page. Who? The 4 representatives who went down, who shook the cage trying to get this guy released, this thug released. You know, I saw the wife interviewed. They very rarely talk about this. I saw the wife being interviewed. I think it was on NBC, surprisingly. And I think they asked her, was he ever violent to you? Was he, meaning her, this guy Garcia, was he ever violent to you? And she paused, trying to think how to answer it. And then she said, I'm glad he's alive. She did not answer the question about whether he had beaten her. She evaded it altogether and said, well, I'm glad he's alive. Her non-answer was an answer. And, the media kind of just let that slide. They just sort of let it slip away.
Somewhere out there, we could probably find that audio, and that probably needs to be played just to shove it down their throat. What are they going to do? Come up with a third woman? Look, they go, because I was having that, argument with somebody, and they said, oh, well, yeah, but that was the first, not the present woman, not his wife now. Okay, you just acknowledged that he beat the hell out of this one person.
Yeah.
Once a beater, always a beater. Once a liar, always a liar. Once a cheater, always a cheater.
They go around saying, well, he had a right to get due process. Where does it say that? He's not a citizen of our country. He's here illegally, and he deserves due process. That's the problem with these rulings from these judges. They're bestowing upon these people who snuck across our borders the same rules and rights that American citizens have. And I don't think they have that ability, that they haven't got that right to do that. If you got here, if I snuck into your house, and you're eating dinner, do I have a right to eat dinner? If I snuck into your house and I'm there and you caught me, before you kick me out again, do I have a right to sit down and have what you're eating? You'd say, get the hell out of here. I'm calling the police, if you didn't already call the police. But what these judges are saying is, hey, they snuck in. They have to be processed just like you do, you the American citizen. That's BS. But you know what? It isn't the outcome. It's the process that is screwing things up. Maybe in the long run, these judges are going to be found to be wrong, but it'll drag out. It'll slow the wheels of justice down to a crawl, and that's what they're looking to do.
Well, I sat there last night hearing all the news about how Trump is destroying the stocks are down, yada, 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 yada. But, it turned out at the end of the day, the stocks were up.
Yeah.
All 3 indicators were up 2.1 to 2.3%. Now, the other news is, well, Trump caved to China, well, did he cave to China? Or, is it part of the plan because they're saying, oh, the guy, it's the art of the deal failed, or is he capitulating to, the weakness of the left, that's out there screaming and hollering? Trump doesn't give up. He will sit there and change his strategy, and he will, steer that ship out at sea and navigate the waters to get what he wants. And that is the art of the deal, my friends. So if you sit there and say, oh, it didn't work out in black and white, straight lines, just like he said. He never says that,
Right.
There's give and take.
You
there's
talk about
negotiation.
finances. I coincidentally, I have a great financial advisor. I've had him for years. I'm not going to mention his name or where he works. I don't want to get him in trouble because I found out after I had hired him and we worked with him for years, I found out he's also politically like-minded. I didn't know that, which I thought was kind of nice. It made things a little more comfortable. We could talk. But yesterday he called just to see how I'm doing. Am I comfortable with everything? And, are you believing all the nonsense that the media is throwing around out there about the economy? And he said, because don't. The economy is going to be just fine. There are historic corrections that it makes and it's making, and in the long run, we're going to come out of this way ahead. Hang in there. And I believe that, and this guy that I deal with has a long track record of success.
Look, now is the time to sit there and buy, because you're right. There is a time of correction. It always does that, and it's like, and when it corrects, it's going to be like a tidal wave coming. So right now you got that lull that's in there and everyone's going, oh, the sky is falling here. We're going to hit rock bottom of the ocean. Buy. If you see a deal, and that this is a future technology, then buy. And the other thing to do is, if you like the show, maybe you found us on a new platform, like and give us a share. We'd appreciate it.
And while you're liking a lot of things, like the fact that we also sell a great cup of coffee here. It's Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee. Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee, available at rightsideshop.com, rightsideshop.com. Or you can go to it'sanotherday.com and press the button at the top of the screen, and you'll find our delicious medium blend roast and medium decaf blend roast. It's delicious. We also have, by the way, Juan, Jose, and the Border Crossers, direct from Tijuana, here to sing our jingle.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee. I love Scott Jennings. I think he's the lone voice of reason in the sea of lunacy over at CNN. And I still think that his office has got to be, like I've said before, down in the bowels of the building next to the furnace, in a lonely, dark room lit by one light hanging without a shade in the middle of his room. He has an old World War II metal desk, and they gave him a dial phone to use because that's what they think of Scott Jennings. But he was there and on a panel, and he was talking about the angry left.
And the message of this is not to, because Bill Maher, first of all, I totally agree. He's totally in the right to do it. And I loved his monologue. Even though I disagree with most everything he believes politically, he was right to do this and he was right to speak out about it. But this isn't about that dinner. It's about the next one, because this is the modern left. It's an attempt always to intimidate people into not ever doing it again. It's to silence yourselves or we'll do it for you. That's the purpose of this op-ed, so that the next comedian or the next person on the American left chooses not to speak to Donald Trump. This is all an effort to get people not to do what you just said, which is to talk to each other and our political leaders.
What he was talking about was Bill Maher's dinner meeting with Donald Trump in the White House last month. And Maher, to his credit, said, look, I'm not going to be a MAGA person anytime soon, but it was good for us to sit down and have a pleasant conversation, and I learned something about the man and what he's thinking, and he learned a little something about me. But apparently it was this whole conversation, again, was stimulated by what Larry David wrote in an article in the New York Times suggesting that Maher had dinner with Hitler. That's how Larry David, Larry David, in my opinion, and I'm just saying this for me, but I always thought he was about as funny as a good kick in the groin. I never thought this guy was funny, but everybody seems to like Larry David, and that's okay. You can like whoever you like. But
what's life without a kick in the groin?
He is a leftist, and he's a devout leftist, and there's no compromise for him. Whereas with Bill Maher, he's saying, look at, know your enemy. I mean, if you don't believe in the policies, at least find out what the guy's all about. And that's, I think, at least an honest way of looking at things.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to point out? Well, Tom Homan. Tom Homan was.
All right. Yeah, I have a couple of things after that.
Well, go ahead. I will go with your.
Well,
couple
no. I was just going to talk about apparently Senator Ron Johnson wants 911 investigated again. He's saying Building 7 was a planned demolition.
Well, don't you wonder about Building 7? I think it went down. Building 7 at the World Trade Center was a building that they said shouldn't have gone down. It went down in late afternoon. The other buildings were hit by the airplanes mid-morning, like 9:30, 9 o'clock. And Building 7 went down like about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And they couldn't figure out why it went down because it didn't have any. Was it struck by anything? Was it debris that brought it down?
How quick were the insurance claims filed on that, too?
Well, I think they were right away, Bill.
So, it takes a little while to get the paperwork together. It's amazing. And there's a tragedy going on. I think I already know what's going on here. Let's get that paperwork.
Well, they changed his insurance. The guy who owns the building changed his insurance like a week or two before the planes hit.
Upped it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now let me tell you something just about that going on. Usually when an owner changes insurance, they downgrade. I only say that because I worked at a radio station one time in a town where we got hit by a hurricane. They said, nothing's going to come, but Frederick came and, wiped out a lot of the stuff that we owned that we downgraded.
Yeah.
And we had to do a lot of dancing to get things paid for, to get things back to snuff. And I was like going, brilliant job there, buddy. That you downgraded the insurance, and I'm sitting here having to do the song and dance. So it happens.
Hey, I want to ask you, if you're out in your yard and maybe you're raking leaves or working on your lawnmower, and you hear the kids start to make a noise at the other end of your yard, and you run to them, and they're in the garage area, and you see that they're making a noise because a large black bear has come into your yard and is within arm's length of your kids. And I'm talking about little kids. One of them is almost an infant, okay, and maybe 1 or 2 years old, a toddler. And this is a safe yard. This is in Connecticut, right? And you would think, what's the problem? Well,
I'll tell you what I do.
Well, I'm going to tell you what this guy, Todd Topez, did. This is Bethlehem up in Litchfield County.
Yeah.
Channel 3 went up there and talked to him. And he said that he heard the noise and he took a gun and that he had, which I thought was interesting. I didn't think citizens were allowed to carry guns in Connecticut.
We'll see that. Yeah, that's problem number one for Connecticut. Yeah.
And he fired 5 or 6 rounds to scare off the black bear, which, by the way, had gone into his garage. It was in his garage, mind you. It was probably looking for a screwdriver or something. I don't know. It was in his garage. He took his gun. He fired a few rounds off. Then he fired a few rounds in the direction of the retreating black bear, only to find out later on that, unbeknownst to him, apparently one of his bullets that was meant to scare had struck the animal and killed the black bear. Well, the Department of Environmental Protection in Connecticut, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, they did what any good bureaucracy should do. They arrested him. I mean,
now, had the bear killed the children? Well, his black bear probably hungry, and
you can't criticize the bear. It was doing the natural thing.
Yeah, and what's the natural thing for a protective parent to do? Protect their child. I mean, I would have, bang! It would have been one shot straight through the bear's heart or head.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he would have been in trouble for shooting in a community area. I don't care. They say about better to be
safe than sorry.
Better to be judged by 12 of your peers than to be carried out by 6 of your peers. Meaning, better to go to court.
Friends.
Yeah, and as opposed to being. And I think he did the right thing, like you said, Bill. I'd take my gun and bang, that's it. And I wouldn't be shooting scare shots. I'd be nailing that sucker because you don't want to come back. If it thinks it's, well, I can go back to that garage again. Nothing really happened. There was no consequence. Bears aren't that brilliant,
Yeah, but you know what? If you hurt them and they go off and they'll go, that person hurt me, I'm going back. I mean, I don't know how deep thought that bear is. I'm going to stop it right there. My kids are there and vulnerable to it, and it's on my property. Sorry, bear, but you overstepped the bounds. I mean, because if that bear can do that, I guess if you had a predator coming in that had a knife and was getting ready to jab your child, are you allowed to shoot it? Well, no, that's a violation of the law.
Well, not in Connecticut. Not in Connecticut. In Connecticut, they arrest you. This is nonsense, folks. We have gone off the beaten path. Now, I think in Pennsylvania, it's different. There's something called a castle law. A man has the right to protect his own property and I guess his loved ones on that property. And I guess that would probably mean wild animals, too. I live in a rural community. I have deer that walk through my yard like it's a thoroughfare every single day. They walk in the morning one direction, and in the night or the late afternoon, they walk back, sometimes 30 of them, and they walk between my house and my neighbor's house, which is only about 40 or 50 feet apart. It's not like, it's down the road, the farmhouse down the road, but they just think they own the area. They walk by. They don't run across the street anymore. That takes too much effort. They walk across the street, and you darn well better stop. So you wonder, I mean, if deer will do that, and there are bears in the area too. If bears stroll, they had a bear, by the way, in Connecticut last week. This really happened. There's something called the West Farms Mall in Hartford. Yeah. Big mall, old mall. When I worked in Hartford years ago, it was a new mall. Well, they've kept it up. It's still a very popular mall. They had a black bear stroll into the parking lot at West Farms Mall in West Hartford, Connecticut last week.
Well,
walk by customers, walk up to the door of the mall. What happened if it would have gotten into the mall, Bill? Would they have shot it? We'll tranquilize it, Hey.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is, okay, they got a problem with the black bears. We're just coming off of winter. What do bears do during the winter? They hibernate.
Yeah.
So when they get out of hibernation, they come out there hungry as hell.
And what do they smell in the mall?
Food.
Yeah.
So why doesn't the state get off its lazy butt and sit there, and they know they got a bear problem there. They can tranquilize and move them, or they can sit there, make sure that there is something, make it a lazy bear. Let that bear know there's a place to go for food. We'll make sure you got food there, but so it stays in its environment and its habitat.
I couldn't help but think that even when my father was a kid back in the 20s and 30s, back in the 20th century, if a bear strolled into your yard and you shot it, the only question you'd have is who's going to cut it up? Are we having bear steak for dinner tonight? I mean,
or bear jerky.
But all of a sudden, the government has stepped in the way of all logical reasoning, and now it's like, the Department of Energy and Environment says you can't protect your yard with a gun. Unbelievable.
Well, that yard that you own once was the bear's, but
not that bear. Not that bear. It's too young. I mean, I've lived here longer than that bear. Maybe his ancestors lived in the area.
Yeah, I don't know, but they're shucking off their responsibility and passing it on to them. I could relate a story that happened to me a long time ago. Showing you the liberal wackiness, but I'll save that story for another day.
Yes, because this day is just about wrapped up. Hopefully you'll tell your friends about our program. We're on Monday through Saturday, and we are here with all the latest news stories. We have our opinion, and we look forward to sharing them every day with you. For new listeners who just bumped into this show, This is our 4th year of doing this program. We've been doing this for 4 years. Can you believe that? It's probably because of all the money that we've made, Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Friends, we haven't made a dime on this show. We've spent more money on the show than we haven't sold any advertising, but we did get bestowed one thing last week, and that was out of all the political podcasts out there, some 4,800 or something like that out of the 2 million podcasts, we are in the top 1 percentile.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing, which is a wonderful thing. We also are, if people have been following our program for a while, we're moving our platform to a different platform. We'll be on a platform called Megaphone, which is, I guess, owned by Spotify.
Yeah, I think what they do is they distribute us to all the platforms. Our main hosting platform will now receive instead of send.
Yes.
And, so we've kind of changed the hierarchy of how things go. That's why we're pumping the fact that we know we're going to have new people out there going, well, who are these guys? Punch?
Yeah,
so
weird.
We got to say, do the like and share thing. I did want to pass along, things to look for. Of course, the Democrats still crying the sky is falling.
Right.
And they're going to be doing that over. They're touting now that Social Security is going to be disrupted. And I'm like going, okay, it's their old playbook. The only way they would do that if they never got the budget done right is because the charter of the government is we pay our bills before, anything else. So that could screw things
Bill, they've
up.
been doing that, Bill, for decades. That's the old standby. Scare the hell out of the old people about Social Security.
And that's, well, like I said, hate, fear, and destruction and disdain. That's the Democratic Party. Federal judge has ordered Trump administration to restore the voice of America. So I'm sure we're going to have more to say about that. And then
another federal judge sticks his nose where he shouldn't. Yes.
Now, last but not least, apparently the O'Keefe team, they're releasing a video today that will expose things, resistance, and the shenanigans that have been going on in the Pentagon in relation to Pete Hegseth.
Yeah. They're trying desperately to bring Pete Hegseth down.
But apparently this is, so I'm taking this as positive. They're showing all the shenanigans that are going on. That video could be coming out here moments, if not whatever. And then, of course, see what happens in the stocks today, because I guess the tariff was lifted on China, and stocks were up yesterday.
The other thing to look
more to go.
The other thing is the situation in Rome right now with the Roman Catholic Church. It does not have a leader right now. Pope Francis is lying in state till his funeral on Saturday, and then they'll go into a conclave behind closed doors, very secretive. They lock it up, and they can't leave that room until they've selected a new pope. And what Bill said is true. Pope Francis stacked the deck in his favor with people who are like-minded.
80% of them, 80% of the people voting are liberal-minded like him, which means that they believe in the sexual identity, transsexual, and you can choose your. He believed in all of that.
And as somebody who's a practicing Catholic, I have been all my life, and I still am. You can. My dad used to say, you don't fix something by leaving it. And I always thought that was a great slogan. He actually invented that, but you don't fix something by leaving it. The church has got problems, and I think Francis was a problem. He was a divisive pope. He really ticked off, alienated a lot of devout Catholics with his stance on homosexuality, with his anti-American stance. He stepped into areas he never should have stepped into. And, they will pretend when they describe him in the media for the next week or so, they'll talk about him like he's a saint on earth. I mean, every news operation will talk about how the devout and he was a man. And, when I was a kid, I was taught one thing in Catholicism. A pope, they talk about papal infallibility. That only that's only involved with issues of theology in the Catholic Church. They believe if a pope says something which is theological, then he's accurate. Other things,
right,
he's fallible.
Here's a question for you. We've had a liberal pope, and you've seen all the changes that have happened. And let's just say, because he's stacked the deck, you have another liberal pope. The vast majority of practicing Catholics want a conservative. But if they get a liberal pope, this distortion of reality is going to continue. And let's say this new pope is in for another 15 years. You've got young people that are coming into life now. I don't remember things when I didn't pay attention to the news as much as I do now. So I'm just saying the perception is, what's not normal will be normal at that point in time. And
there's
a given.
There's
We're
report,
rewriting.
There's a report that came out saying that Catholicism is growing with a large segment of young people joining the church or becoming more devout in their Catholicism, which is wonderful. And by the way, Catholics think they were the first Christian faith, and they're it's not the Christians and the Catholics, they are Christian. Whether you like Catholicism, they are Christian, just as there are Episcopalian Christians, Anglican, Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian. They're all Christians. They all believe in Christ.
And that's why the Christian faith is bigger than the Muslim faith. But when you look at the Muslims, they are growing, and they do not accept any form of Christianity. They don't accept any form of any other religion.
True. That's true.
And so
there's no middle ground with them. It's either you are us or not.
And, they can use your laws, other countries' laws, and our laws with the freedom of religion and freedom of expression. Well, we should be free to practice our religion.
But,
and that is true.
I heard a Muslim say on TV last week, she said there are two types of Muslims. There are people who follow Islam, and they're kind of middle of the road, mainstream. They are accepting of other faiths, but they believe in the Quran, and they're.
But the Quran does not.
Then there are
accept.
Islamists.
Yeah,
she said Islamists are the ones who are radical. The Islamists, there's no middle ground, and she said that's what even the people who are mainstream, the middle ground Muslims, they don't get along with the Islamists, but the Islamists are growing. They're the ones who riot in the streets and have no tolerance for Christians.
And they are growing, and that's a big faction. But, my point is that when you talk about freedom of religion, and I'm not saying they don't have the right to practice what they believe, but keep in mind, you allow this, and what they believe is you have no place in their world or in their existence. So when they get to practice freely what they believe, that is the extinction of you.
That facility the city they want to build in Texas, it's going to have Sharia law. It's going to follow Sharia law, not U.S. law.
Right.
How does a city in a American state not follow the American laws?
Well, it's funny because, like I said, go watch Wild Wild Country, because it's already happened once, and they're still around, and they followed their own law. They took over, and the fact that they have a community means that they've got that. Now, what they're going to do is outgrow the boundaries, and that means they're going to have to go over and infiltrate and get into the ballots there, get on the voting rolls there. And then they will vote in favor of them expanding and coming over. Then they will get on the ballot, and they will grow and grow and grow. And
like a cancer.
Yeah, I didn't want to use the word cancer because then say, well, you're picking on them, but that's exactly what it is. You have to realize it for what it is. And this is a holy war. Whether you want to accept it or not, and you're a goody two-shoe little liberal, sometimes your little touchy-feely things can lead to some bad things. If you want to sit there and, call us names, go ahead, call us names. You want to sit there and say that your rights to certain things, well, you know what? You do have certain rights, but so do we. But don't sit there and distort. Take Muslims.
Okay, Bill. You want to finish this?
I was just going to say, take Muslims. And say, well, it is their right to believe what they believe. If you're transgender, homosexual, any of those, you are definitely not included in the quote unquote club.
I see gays for Gaza. I see gays for Hamas, and I'm thinking, do these people know that if they were over there, they'd be throwing them off of buildings?
They'd be beheaded right there, then and there. So look, you know what? You're going. You're just these wacky Christians. I may not believe in your sexual identity and how you think you got there, and that it's the science, but I accept your right to be here. All right? And I acknowledge that, and I'm not going to hold it against you. As long as you don't want to hold things against me, we can get along. But, I'm just saying, that path you're walking down, it's a booby trap.
We could talk forever, and I think we're going to talk some more this week about this, but I think we have to wrap this up now. A reminder, friends, please tell your friends about our program. It's Another Day. Like and share the program, and spread the word. Help us grow the show. We're here Monday through Saturday, and that's about it. I'm done.
Yeah.
No more to talk about right now. You can take us out of here.
Well, I've got a pot of Right Side coffee brewing, and I'm going to go get to it. So until we meet again tomorrow, hasta la vista, baby. We're out of here.
This is CRN America.